this is one of the first seminars. There'll be series of seminars, and I would really like and appreciate input from everybody who's Kashmiri, who's non-Kashmiri, what their perceptions are, if it is good, if it is no good. It might well be that there are, at the end of the research there might be no different needs, or there might be some different needs.
The research project, I'm explaining in kind of it has two main components. One is that what will be the core questions I will be, as part of our research team, we will be looking into. And the second part is that what activities are involved in this project, what we will be doing to gather data which is required to address and understand those aspects of the community. So first question which we are addressing in this research, and I must I think highlight that this is first ever research of its kind taking place in Britain, focusing on Kashmiri community and on their needs and issues. So first of all, whenever we talk about Kashmiri community in any town, the first question comes up is how many Kashmiris are there in that town. And because they are not included in national census question on ethnicity, so we don't get enough help from national statistics data that how many people are in different towns and different wards. So to have some credible idea and estimate, we can't be accurate, but to have a credible estimate, we will we will be looking at the size of community. Then the next aspect we'll be looking into is what is the level of inclusion at the moment, in different service areas, what data is available, what awareness is there, and all that. And then the next one will be, like Adalat said, that there is a perception that this community has specific needs which are not met and addressed. But is that the case? That is also the question we'll be looking into.
One of the things that this project will do, which we've already been doing, is bring a bit of Manchester University into the borough and hopefully forge other links. But before I kind of stopped working on this, and I did more work on unemployment, and that's a very important aspect for me of this project. And I did this research in '96 with young people, some of whom are here today. So looking at levels of youth unemployment. And what is really interesting about this research in 1996 is if you look at the statistics on Bangladeshi and Pakistani heritage young people in the mid-1990s, what you find is that it's Bangladeshi heritage young people who are socioeconomically deprived, in the sense that their education attainment, employment rates are lower than Pakistani heritage young people. And I'm using the statistics, so this is why I'm using these labels. By the time you get to the 2000s, what you find is Bangladeshi heritage young people have actually overtaken Pakistani heritage young people. And if you look at the statistics from 2010 in the Northwest, as a community, the Bangladeshi heritage community has progressed economically and in educational attainment from a situation where it's the other way around. And so this was something that I thought was very, very curious. And so I did some work in Manchester, published this article called Against the Odds, which looks at education attainment. And one of the factors that I think I discussed with Shamus at the time, and I talked to Dalit about this as well, is that to some extent we don't have an idea of the background of what we call Pakistani heritage. It's the same when we use the word Indian. I mean, what does Indian heritage mean? When you have someone like me who's got Indian heritage, who's a Punjabi Sikh, and there could be a Gujarati Muslim who's an Indian heritage as well. So it doesn't tell us much about the cultural background or the language background or the needs of the communities. And one of the things that we sort of theorized about at that time was that this kind of socioeconomic, if you like, problems or issues is because the Kashmiri population has never been statistically recognised or targeted for socioeconomic support or for employment programs or for all of the kind of many programs.
There were a few things that were happening when I was trying to investigate this. And what I found is that in relation to this diaspora community in particular, there's anecdotal evidence that there's marginalisation, and some of the studies that have been commissioned here were sort of trying to tease these things out. Of course, it's hard to identify whether people from Kashmir are more marginalised than those from mainland or Pakistan proper because of the way that the ethnic monitoring happens. We can't disaggregate them very easily. But two things that were absolutely definite, without any doubt, is that there is widespread stigmatisation of this diaspora community, and also stereotyping and othering. So this happens particularly within those who are also from other subcontinent groups, but particularly those from Pakistan and Punjab. So I wondered how that might affect people, young people from the AJK diaspora in terms of their identity and whether they felt that they belonged and who they belonged to and where they belonged. And one of the things that was really obvious to me was the stigmatisation around language, particularly the fact that people were telling them to be, you know, so a very common theme that would come up in social media, for example, was that people from AJK didn't know how to speak properly. They couldn't speak Punjabi properly. Or they were calling themselves Kashmiri, but they weren't really Kashmiri because they're not from the valley. So there were all these things that were kind of coming up in terms of disputing their identity. And actually then subsequent studies that had happened had found that people from AJK couldn't actually say who they were or what language they spoke. Now to me, as a young person who is battling with issues to do with heritage, if you can't even say who you are, and you can't even say what your language is, or defend your right to speak that language to people who are telling you that you can't speak your language, there's something really wrong.
Dalit said, like, I work with the National Union of Students, so we were doing a training conference the last 3 days in Warwick University actually, and we had like welfare officers and student union presidents all came together to get training, and we did this session where we just told all the delegates to write in one circle like what's core to their identity, and then outer circles like the layers of their identity, but in the middle just what's really core to them, so whether it's like different oppressions they face, like for being LGBT or whatever. And this one girl there really hit it on the nail for me, like what like this event should be focused towards like tackling, because we told everyone to describe it in a minute, and she was like, I don't know how to say it in a minute because I'm really confused and I'm thinking about it, because I'm a British, she was like, I'm from Kashmir, but I don't really identify so much with that. I feel more of a British Muslim. But now, she was like, because I grew up in a very white area. And she was like, but now, because of all the Islamophobia coming in the UK, I'm not sure if being British and Muslim work together either. And then she's like, and then I'm also working class. So, and she's like, so I feel really confused about my identity and who I am today. And she was like, is that gonna, she was like, now I'm thinking about it, I shouldn't really be a welfare officer, should I? If I'm so confused about my own identity, how am I going to help students? And when I listened to it, I was like, because it just resonated completely with myself. And I was like, as I spoke to officers, I was like, it should really be shocking that you feel that way, but it isn't. Because if you think about it, the majority of, like, the large amount of British Muslims are Kashmiri. Obviously half of that is then, at least half of it is women, and most of us are working class. So I'm like, actually, you're not like that much of a minority within minority communities. Like, you shouldn't feel so isolated. Like, you shouldn't feel so confused about identity. There's loads of people in this country who have the same identity as you. But because of the labelling, in society, you just feel like even more isolated than you actually should be.